Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. Alright, hopefully this is the last video you'll have to sit through without the full production value, but I appreciate you all bearing with me. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm trying to record these while I'm on the other side of the country for work. I've been here for a couple weeks now, finally about to fly home. So really looking forward to that, and also the fact that I actually recorded the last two videos a first time. This is the second time I'm recording it because I didn't realize my audio wasn't working. So we're going to try it again. Luckily, in the time it took me to get over my frustration, I figured out a way to do the tier list for you all from my setup that I've got on the road. So that's awesome. So we're going to go through the 3 drops today. Again, we've been going through 1, 2, and 3. If you haven't checked out the first 2 videos already, I highly recommend checking those out first. But ultimately, we're going to go through each point of the curve, and we're going to conclude with 6 plus ink costs. So those will all be lumped together since there's obviously less of them. I forgot to do this yesterday, but just to walk you through our rating system, we've got A, B, C, D, and F. A cards are effectively your first pickable ones, the ones that you'll be looking to get within your first few picks. You'll be thrilled with, but obviously happy to take them first. I do use plus or minus for A, B, C, and A, B, and C, definitely. D, occasionally. B cards are ones that you'll be looking to get in the first half of the pack. If you get them later on the pack, you're thrilled. But if you get them within the first half of the pack, up to pick 6, you're happy with that. C cards will vary drastically because basically you're looking to get them in the last half of the pack, but C plus you're still pretty happy to have in the deck. C minus you'll have in the deck, but they're just barely playable. D cards are, for me, have to be inkable because they're cards you don't want in the deck. So if I don't want it in the deck, I gotta at least be able to ink it. I'll usually do a D plus for something that is either gonna, quest well enough, just not be a great body, or for me is a niche playable, so 90% of the time you're going to want to ink it, but 10% of the time maybe it's great. F is don't touch it. Uninkable, don't want it in the deck, and occasionally I'll put an inkable card in F just to say this is a trap, stay far, far away from it, do not draft or play this card. So that's the ranking system, so let's jump into it. We got, I think, 55 cards or something to go through, so I'm going to try and get through these relatively quickly so that you're not here for an hour listening to me talk about just the 3 drops. Alright, so we're going to start with Louie, 1 cool duck. 3 cost, inkable, 2/3, 2 lore. While this character is being challenged, the challenging character gets -1 strength. So Louie is effectively like a 2/4, though obviously he benefits from your opponent having smaller characters. So if they've got a bunch of, 1 strength and 2 strength characters, all of a sudden he's a menace. But most of the time, that's not going to be the case. So at best, he's usually the equivalent of a 2/4. I'm not a huge fan of the 3 cost 2/4s, but they're fine. I would relatively equate it to the 3 cost 3/3s with 2 lore, which I've got around a C. So kind of a mid-C tier. Okay, Lady, family dog. 3 cost inkable, 2/2, 2 lore. When you play this character, you may play a character with cost 2 or less for free. I think Lady might have a place in Constructed. In Limited, I think she is a trap, absolutely. The fact of the matter is if you somehow manage to draft a really cohesive aggro deck, then yeah, Lady might do some real damage, but most of the time that's not possible. So most of the time you're going to be dropping a mid 2-drop with it. And probably you've already dropped a 2-drop at this point, and you're going to run out of cards real soon and be left with a bunch of weak bodies, and your opponent's just going to overpower you really quickly. You're going to get to 10 lore really quickly, but you're not going to get to 20. So Lady still quests for 2, so I'm going to put her in that D plus territory, but she is absolutely a trap. Pua, protective pig. Shout out to I think it was Chris, it was Chris on our last video in the comments who called me out. He's like, you're going to rate Pua really highly. I'm like, yes, I will. You got me, Chris. So, Pua, Protective Pig is a 3 cost inkable, 2/2, 1 lore with bodyguard, and when this character is banished, you may draw a card. If you've listened to any of my reviews, I love card draw, I love bodyguard. Bodyguard's going to let you stall when you need to protect a key character. Bodyguard's going to force your opponent to challenge a character that maybe they don't want to. And when it replaces itself, that's brilliant. Basically, it costs 1 more than Jim Deere, and you get that stalling for a turn. The 2/2 body's not doing much either. Maybe a little bit more damage, or obviously more damage. Maybe a little bit more just period than the 0/4 is doing. But for the 1 extra cost, it replaces itself. That is fantastic. I've got this in the A territory. A plus. It's definitely not an A- for me. Like it is, I'm going to be happy to first pick this. Yes, there's absolutely going to be bigger bombs that I'm going to want to pick over Pua, but there isn't going to be a lot of cards that I'm going to want to pick over Pua. So definitely in that territory. All right, King Candy, 3 cost, Inkable, 3/2, 1 lore. Says, when this character is banished, you may return another eraser card from your discard to your hand. So, he's a relatively reasonable body. 3 cost, 3/4 is the rate. So he's losing out on a couple willpower. So his ability's got to be pretty good to offset it. The problem that I have is, again, much like puppies, I think there are better eraser cards in this set than in the previous set. But there's not that many. And really, the only one that I'm excited to bring back would be presumably another King Candy to have a cycle going, or the Vanellope von Schweetz, the 3/1 evasive. There's Wreck-It Ralph, the 3 cost, who's fine. There's Gloyd Orange Boar, who is not good at all. We're going to go over in just a bit. And then there's the 7 cost Wreck-It Ralph that's a super rare. So really, the likelihood of you being able to draft cards such that there's going to be a racer card in your discard when this is banished is probably pretty slim. If you got 2 King Candies in your deck, maybe, but at that point you've probably drafted them too highly, unless people are just handing you them at the end of your pack. So for me, this is in that D territory. Yeah, there's going to be times where you can make it work, and fantastic. Then, great, you're off to the races. Pun not intended, but definitely appreciated. But most of the time, I think it's going to be just a 3 cost 3/2, which is a D. All right, Bolt. Bolt down but not out. 3 cost Inkable 0/4. 4 lore. This character enters play exerted. What do we do about Bolt? Bolt is a half trap, which is to say, on the play, Bolt will almost certainly survive. There's almost no way, shape, or form your opponent's going to have a board state that will deal with this on the play on turn 3. Other than that situation, though, you're going to need a good amount of bodyguards to make it so that this doesn't just die instantaneously, right? Now, some of you may argue, oh, I just needed to quest once, then 3 costs for 4 lore is amazing. Yes, for sure. But you're assuming you can quest once. So I think Bolt is definitely worth including in the deck. But I don't think I'm ever going to draft him as high as you are. So I don't think I'm going to get to play Bolt. But I would absolutely include him in the deck. So I've got him in like a C territory. Certainly above Louie. Which is to say, you know, if I get him 7th, 8th pick, yeah, I'll take him. And I'll take a flyer that I can get him out on the play. But my assumption is that most of the time he's going to be ink, but every once in a while he could be gold. So I'm fine enough, but he's definitely a trap. You're going to draft him too high, so don't do that. Clawhauser, front desk officer, 3 cost Inkable, 1/4, 2 lore, bodyguard, singer 4. Singer 4 doesn't matter. There's no songs in here that matter for him to be singing at 4 cost. Bodyguard, I've mentioned I love Bodyguard. This is about as bad a body as you can get on a Bodyguard. I mean, he quests for 2, but at 1/4, he's probably not gonna ready to quest. He's probably going to get banished the turn after you play him. So he's not good enough. He's still a Bodyguard. He still soaks up damage that you might want to divert from your other characters. So I can't put him in D, but he's about as low as I would put for a Bodyguard that's inkable at least. I will absolutely put uninkable bodyguards lower. Joey, Blue Pigeon, 3 cost, inkable, 3/3/1 lore. Whenever this character quests, you may remove up to 1 damage from each of your characters with bodyguard. The likelihood that you're going to have bodyguards out, even myself that drafts bodyguards aggressively, they're not sticking around very long. They're bodyguards. So the chance of you having this out at a point where a bodyguard has survived long enough to have damage on it and not be banished, and then you quest with this, is so infrequent that it just isn't worth registering. So it's a D again. It's inkable. It's not a terrible body, but it's a D. Madam Medusa, Deceiving Partner, 3-cost inkable, 3/3/1 lore. When you play this character, you may deal 2 damage to another chosen character of yours to return chosen character with cost 2 or less to their player's hand. Dealing 2 damage to one of your characters in order to get the tiniest bit of tempo is awful. I want to put this as an F just because I don't want you playing with it. This is one of those inkable Fs that I'm like, please don't do this to yourself. That is not nearly enough value. I like tempo. I like bouncing my opponent's characters. I like getting some quick advantage that will, be negative for me in the long run because they're not down a card, but will get me early tempo. I dig that, but something that costs 2 or less, you're assuming your opponent's even got something 2 or less out still by the time this matters. 2, at the cost of 2 damage to one of your characters, and it has to be another character. It can't even be Madame Medusa. So if she's the only character you've got, you can't even activate this. At least it's a May. I'll give her that much. But no, she's a trap. All right, Lena Sabrewing. Chris is going to disagree with me on this one. 3-cost inkable, 1/3/1 lore, evasive, with the ability to exert, deal 1 damage to chosen character. I think at cost 3 or less, an evasive that can quest for 1 is still solid, all on its own. 3 willpower, it's going to survive a decent amount. And the ability to deal 1 damage every turn, regardless of any other qualifiers, is going to mess your opponent up so much. I have talked down about giving 1 strength every turn and things like that, but I can't, stress this enough. Dealing 1 damage and giving +1 strength, very, very different. I can deal 1 damage in a vacuum, +1 strength. I need a character that can challenge in a way that lines up right. So, yeah, it really is important to note that the ability to deal 1 damage each and every turn, regardless of restrictions, is fantastic. I really liked Robin Hood in Floodborne in draft, and it was a 2-cost uninkable without evasive that had this ability, and it was hard to protect it well enough for it to work. But when I could get 2 or 3 of these out, all of a sudden that is an absolute force. Now, this isn't uncommon, it's unlikely, and it's an evasive. Your opponents are going to draft it. It's unlikely that you're going to get them in the same volume that I was able to get Robin Hoods. And it doesn't benefit from Robin Hood. That said, there was an action, 3-cost action that I really like to combine with Robin Hood that banished a damaged character. So it doesn't have that advantage, so I've got to keep that in mind. I've got to kind of maybe bring this down from where I want it to be, because I personally think this is like an A-, B+. I'm going to put it in the B category because it's probably not an A-, but I think it's going to be very good. Or at least very solid. I'm going to be happy to get it, pick 4. Megara, part of the plan. 3-cost inkable. Did I just say Megara? Megara, part of the plan. 3-cost inkable, 2/5/1 lore. While you have a character named Hades in play, this character gains challenger +2. You're not going to have a character named Hades in play. Not consistently at any way, shape, or form. Is there even a Hades in the set? If there is, yeah, there is, but you're not going to have it in play. Okay, so it's a vanilla 3-cost 2/5. Do I like this better or worse than the 3/4? I think probably worse, because I think there's enough 3 willpower things that the 3 strength matters. But it's still pretty solid. So I've got, the 3/4 in kind of a mid-C territory. I think I'm going to put it right next to that. I think I've got it above Louie, but probably below Bolt. Bolt has a lot of upside. Again, I think it's a trap. I think for most people, they're going to misplay it. But for me personally, I think Bolt has enough upside to be worth being above Megara. Yelana, Northuldra Leader, 3-cost inkable, 2/3/2 lore. When you play this character, chosen character gains challenger +2 this turn. So this is basically, was it? It was Jafar. No, Was it Jafar last set? Oh my goodness, I'm blanking. What was the character last set? The 3-2. Yeah, it was a Jafar. Yeah, it was a 3-cost 3/2/2 lore with this ability. So this is just the same thing, but in reverse. If anybody knows, I like 2/3 bodies over 3/2 bodies at 3 cost. Maybe all of a sudden it matters more being a 3/2 over 2/3, but I think you could relatively interchange them. And personally, I probably rate it a little bit higher as a 2/3. But regardless, it's in the same territory. I think I had Jafar at C+. I've got Yelana at B-, somewhere in that range. Perfectly interchangeable. Poe Dispel, 3-cost inkable, 3/4/1 lore. As I mentioned, I really like these. I like them certainly over Bolt. I think it is worth it. I think Bolt is right in the middle there. I think that those 3/4 bodies do so much work early in the game. By contrast, I don't think the 4/3s do much. Madam Mim, up to no good, 3-cost inkable, 4/3/1 lore. I think they lose out to too much. I mean, ultimately, there's not as many 3-strength 2-cost characters, but this can trade with a lot of 3 costs. It can even take out some 4 costs. The problem I have is at my 2 and 3 drops, I am looking to 2-for-1. I'm looking to banish my opponent's character in a challenge and survive to tell the tale, so that I can then continue questing or challenge another character or whatever the case may be. Even if I'm not trading, then I could call it 1.5-for-1, right? I banish one of my opponent's characters, my opponent gets a favorable challenge in, but there's some residual damage left over, right? The 3/4 doesn't do that, or the 4/3 doesn't do that nearly as well as the 3/4 does. So I much prefer the 3/4 to that, so I think I'll have the 4/3 even below Megara here. Okay, Bambi, 3-cost, uninkable, 1/1, 3 lore. This is Bambi Little Prince specifically. When you play this character, gain 1 lore. When an opponent plays a character, return this character to your hand. I have mentioned that draft is a very character-heavy, character-centric format, which means you're effectively paying 3-cost for 1 lore. Eventually, Bambi might stick for a turn. But most of the time, you're just going to have a 3-cost uninkable stuck in your hand that you're going to pay 3 to gain 1 lore and be very, very sad. So for that reason, this is an F. All right. Flower, 3-cost, inkable, 3/3/1 lore. When you play another character, look at the top card of your deck, put it on either the top or the bottom of the deck. I've mentioned before, I don't think that card filtering is all that impactful in draft. On average, the difference in value between one random card and another in your deck is not particularly high. That being said, what's the cost to acquire that? We're effectively losing 1 willpower off the vanilla stat line, and you're going to be playing characters. So I think to that effect, there is enough value there attached to a body which is good enough that I think it is worth playing. It is certainly not in the D category. I've got Flower as a C. I would probably put Flower... Wow, I think I'm going to put it above the 3/4. Yeah, I think I'm willing to trade that 1 willpower for the ability to filter. I'm assuming I'm only filtering 1 or 2 times, and that's enough. If I filter more than that, I'm feeling really good about it. Okay, They Never Come Back. 3-cost, inkable. Action. Up to 2 chosen characters count ready at the start of their next turn. Draw a card. I really like this. It's not a card that I'm looking to play on 3. I'm looking to play it later in the game, so I might ink it early. But if I can, if I draw this turn 5 or 6 and I can hold on to it for a few turns, oftentimes, hopefully not a pure race, but oftentimes draft tends to be a race. Limited tends to be a race, right? You're racing to the finish line a little bit. Hopefully your gameplay and your deck building, drafting is strong enough that it's not just that, but that certainly happens. So you factor in, I've got a card here that is going to freeze my opponent's 2 best characters for a turn, plus it replaces itself for just 3 ink. I think that is absolutely going to be worth it in the late game. Even the mid game, right? So I'm probably not stalling them for the win, but I'm stalling them long enough that I get to take advantage. Maybe I was playing from behind before, and now I can take the advantage and force them to react to me. I really like it. Yeah, any card that replaces itself that has a really solid value to it, I'm going to like. But I think this is going to play very, very well. I've got it as a C+. Okay. Pull the lever. 3-cost inkable action. Choose one. Draw 2 cards. Each opponent chooses and discards a card. I've mentioned I don't think discard is nearly strong enough, especially at 3 cost. You would think, how much I love drawing cards, that I would really like this. I don't think it's that strong. I think Friends on the other side, this is not. I think that the ability to sing Friends makes all the difference in the world. And having to take a turn or even half a turn off, paying 3 ink to draw 2 cards is not very strong. I think that it is strong enough that the fact that it is inkable, and later in the game, you will be happy to dig a little bit deeper into your deck, that I'm going to include it, but I don't think it is particularly strong. I think I've got it in the C territory. Ugh. I think I'd rather a functional character over that, so I'm going to put it below Meg. I'll consider Mim very functional. I will play the 4/3s, but I won't be particularly happy about it. Into the Unknown. Okay. So, Into the Unknown. 3-cost, inkable, action, song. Put chosen exerted character into their player's inkwell face down and exert it. So, removal is really hard to come by in Draft, especially the last few sets. And this is hard removal with a caveat, but it takes care of it. It's got 2 caveats, really. One is it has to be an exerted character, and 2, you give them an ink. So you probably don't want to be playing this on 3. You're not going to be getting rid of a very valuable character or singing it on 4. And you're going to be giving them ink. But once we get into the later half of the game, giving them an ink almost doesn't matter because they're not using it particularly efficiently, right? We're living off the top of our decks at that point. The exerted does. So the problem I have with exerted, it needing to be exerted, the reason that I would much rather just pay 5 for this and have it be any character, is if there's a character on board that's going to win them the game, and I've got Into the Unknown in my hand, it's like, well, unless I can find a way to exert it, or I have a way to exert it, I'm out of luck. They got a 3 lore character, even a 2 lore character. They get to quest with it first. They got a big beater. They get to challenge with it first before I can do anything about it. It is still solid removal, so I still think you're going to need to draft this quite high. Let's be frank, you're going to take it first pick because it's just going to be a great card and constructed and a valuable card. But that is beside the point. Because ultimately, yeah, in this world that I bring you into, we don't talk about, or we don't rate things based on the value outside of draft, right? So I've got this as a B, right? Yeah, I've got this as a B. I think you can probably safely take it. You know, I said Lena was a B plus. I'm probably taking Into the Unknown over Lena, so maybe Into the Unknown's a B plus, or Lena's less. That's all right. We're making this up as we go along. I think I'm not going to be particularly happy with this, but I think you have to take it. Beggars can't be choosers, right? Wilhelmina Packard, 3-cost, inkable, 3/4, 1 lore. We already know where that goes. I like her better than Poe as well, so here we are. Tramp, Observant Guardian, 3-cost, inkable, 3/3, 1 lore. When you play this character, chosen character gains ward until the start of your next turn. I've mentioned this many, many times before. Ward is almost useless in draft. We just established removal is very, very hard to come by, which means your opponent's ability to affect your characters is very, very rare, which means ward is almost useless, which makes this a D. Sure. Somewhere in there. Unless you've looked at your opponent's hand and know they've got a way to deal with your character. Fred, Major Science Enthusiast. I love this picture. 3-cost, inkable, 2/3, 2 lore. When you play this character, you may banish chosen item. You're not going to do that, so this comes down here in the D+, because it is a bad body. but a quest for 2 lore. Lewis, Endearing Alligator, 3-cost inkable 4/3. This character enters play exerted. When you play this character, chosen opposing character gains Reckless during their next turn. I just mentioned a couple cards ago that removal is really hard to come by. Believe it or not, this is removal. I've always found it interesting, an interesting dynamic where oftentimes when we're giving something Reckless, we don't always have something that is very threatening for them to challenge into. Well, Lewis handles that. The problem is, if your opponent has a 5/5 on board, don't play Lewis, because you're going to, they're going to challenge the 5/5 into it. They're not going to challenge whatever weaker thing that you force them to challenge with, right? So be very mindful of your board state when you play this, but oftentimes it's going to be quite useful. This against Lena Sabrewing is fantastic, right? So just be mindful of the board state, that you're not going to, don't factor in rush. There's not nearly enough of it to bother. Don't factor in removal. If they've got it, they've got it, right? But do factor in the board state very heavily. Make sure that you're putting your opponent into a place where they have to make, they've got choices between 2 bad decisions, right? Give them nothing but bad options. So I think that as a result, that Lewis is relatively high because he is removal, but he is removal with caveats, with, hoops that you got to jump through. So as a result, I'm at B-. I think, I think I put him above Yelana for sure, but I think I put him under Lena. Chris won't agree with that. Don Karnage. Speaking of which, 3-cost uninkable, 3/2, 1 lore evasive. When you play a character that isn't, play an action that isn't a song, chosen opposing character gains Reckless during their next turn. You can fairly well ignore that second part. Not entirely. I think that's much more likely than some of these things that I tell you to dismiss. It's going to happen probably at some point. If you play a full, pod and you're playing 3 matches, there's a good chance that if you get Don Karnage out, that you will trigger it at some point. Maybe you got 3 or 4 actions in your deck. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't need to be. Just a 3-cost, 3/2 evasive is good enough. Yes, it is uninkable, so you got to be aware of your uninkable count. But if the uninkability isn't an issue, you're going to want to play this on 3 anyway. There's, very little else that you're going to care to play on 3. And it's nothing that you care to play on 3 is so much better that you can't wait to play it later, right? So I think at that, I equate it to Peter Pan from the first chapter. Yes, it was inkable, so you've got to keep that in mind. But just on rate, still very playable. So as a result, I've got Don Karnage at C+. I think they never come back. I might prefer somewhere in there. Archimedes, 3-cost inkable, 2/2, 2 lore. When you play this character, you may banish chosen item. Nope. During your turn, when an item is banished. Don't care. He comes down here in the D+ category because he quests for 2. I've gone too far. He who steals and runs away. 3-cost inkable, banish chosen item, draw a card. Nope. This might as well be an inkable F. You should never, ever, if you have any other ink options, you should not be putting this in your deck. Because if your opponent's playing items, you're relatively happy. Yes, we've established there's a couple items that are worth playing, but the likelihood that your opponent has that is so slim. Wrong lever, 3-cost inkable, return chosen character to their player's hand. Put a card name, pull the lever from your discard on the bottom, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to have pull the lever with this. I mean, you may have it in the deck together. If you've got one of each, great. You're like, someday I'm going to make this work. So unlikely. If you've got one of another, because you're not going to have 2, right? I mean, yes, I know. I think pull the lever is either common or uncommon. It doesn't matter. The likelihood that you're going to have enough, because you don't even really want to play more than one. So it's just not going to happen. So let's look at the first ability, because it's not useless, right? Just returning a character to their player's hand for 3 isn't awful. It's not particularly good. I would much rather Mother Knows Best, but it's still not awful. So I've got this as a C-, and I think I've got it above Clawhauser. Probably not above Louie, but still functional. Okay. I hate that I have to keep scrolling down every time. Oh, this one will be quick. Walk the plank. 3-cost unequal action. Your pirate characters gain exert to banish chosen damaged character this turn. So many hoops to jump through. It's uninkable. It's an action that doesn't inherently do anything. It needs pirate characters, which aren't that common in this set. Why was this not in Azurite Sea? And banishing a damaged character, which might not even be relevant. So all these things amount to a very hard F. Okay, Gloyd Orange Boar. Is it just me or these names getting weirder and weirder from these racer? I mentioned this was bad before. 3-cost inkable 1/2/1 lore. When you play this character, each opponent loses 1 lore, and you gain 1 lore. We used to get a 2/2 Aladdin for this. Why am I getting 1 less? Just because it's a racer, and there's so many great racer strategies? This is just bad. This is another D. And I would put this above the... yeah, I want this much less than King Candy, as far as racer strategies go. Gyro Gear Loose. 3-cost inkable 1/3/1 lore evasive. When you play this character, chosen opposing character gets -3 strength this turn. Again, just the 1/3/1 lore for 3 is not awful. I would put that as like a C-ish, all on its own. The -3 strength, huge boost. Yes, it's a one-of, but and I'm probably not going to want to play this on 3, but I'm going to want to play this a couple turns later. And yeah, you're going to get great value from it, and it's going to stick around, going to be annoying for your opponent. So I like all those things. And it's not awful on 3, right? If you're on the draw, and you can run your 2/2, your 2/3 into their 3/2, and survive because of this, great. So where do I have Gyro at? I've got him as a B+. I think B+ in that range. I think... he's kind of quasi-removable as well. I'm going to put him above Louie. The value of evasives is quite high. The Dodo. 3-cost inkable 0/6/1 lore. This character gets +1 strength for each 1 damage on him. We're going to talk tomorrow about how Minnie Mouse is infinitely better than this. It's going to annoy your opponent for a bit. But, you know, it's... going to ultimately trade with it, you know, 1 cost, 2 cost, somewhere in there. Now it's a 3 cost, so a 3 cost trading with a 2 cost after it's annoyed your opponent for a little bit isn't awful. It's probably questing a couple times before then. So it's not bad, it's just not good either. I've got the Dodo as a D. You could probably put him as a C-, somewhere in that range. In fact, I'm ready to move Clawhauser down to D. We got enough C's going on here. My first D bodyguard that isn't uninkable. That's sad. Can I put... nah, I can't put Dodo above Clawhauser. It's just not good. Alright. Mushu. 3-cost. Uninkable. Let me just say the Dodo is a good card against bad players. For what that's worth. Mushu. Fast-talking dragon. 3-cost. Inkable 2/3/1 lore. The ability exert. Chosen character gains rush this turn. I really liked the Rabbit's Pocket Watch in the first chapter, but it was an item. It was harder for your opponent to interact with. This is a character. Your opponent's going to banish it a lot easier. So getting use out of it 1 time is probably C territory. If you can get use out of it more often than that, then we're really talking, because Rush is quasi-removal to some degree. You can get your latest characters out and affecting the board a turn early. I'm going to draft him probably higher than I should. I have him in my chart here kind of at first instinct at B-. I think I like him more than Don Karnage, but I don't know that I like him more than anything else that I've got here. So I think I'm actually going to put him at C+. Okay. Figaro, 3-cost, 3/3/1 lore, opposing items enter play exerted. Nope, that goes down here again. Wreck-It Ralph, I alluded to this earlier. He's okay. 3-cost inkable 4/2/1 lore. When you play this character, chosen racer character gets +4 strength this turn. So we've looked at all the common and uncommon racers so far. Really, the only one that I'm actively wanting to play is Vanellope, the 3-1 evasive. This is probably the next best one because a 4-2 is fine. Is C-, D+ territory. If you can get things going with the racers other than Gloyd, then all of a sudden this becomes great value. If you can actually give a racer character +4 strength, if you got a King Candy in your discard, and you give another King Candy +4 strength, takes out a big character and brings back a King Candy, you're doing it. It's just not very likely. So I've got him, at C- probably? Got to remind myself what I've got him at. Wreck-It Ralph, C-, look at that. It's almost like I know how I feel about cards. I think that's a fair C-. I think maybe he's a D+. We've already got a lot of C's. Yeah, let's put him at D+. If you've got certainly Vanellope's and another, if you get a couple Wreck-It Ralphs, you get some King Candies, then bump him up. But probably he's just a D. Okay. I hate that I keep having to scroll down, but that's okay. Mr. Snoops. Now we're talking. 3-cost, inkable, 3/3, 1 lore. During your turn, when this character is banished, you may draw a card. Chris thought I was going to love this, and he's not wrong, but probably not as much as he thinks, which is to say that, Chris, if you haven't got the just by now, I loved your input. Got me thinking about quite a few things. So, Mr. Snoops, I'm going to compare him to Bucky from the last set, which was the 3/2 that when it was banished at any point, you drew a card. I would prefer that, because then I can quest and force my opponent to challenge into him and I get to draw the card. If my opponent banishes this on their turn, I don't get to draw the card. So I have to use this aggressively. So I am more likely to have it survive because it's got 1 more willpower. So maybe I can take out a 2/3 and somehow it's not banished on my opponent's turn. And then I can challenge it again into an opposing 3/3 and get my card. And then I'm feeling really, really good. Unfortunately, as soon as I challenge it and survive, chances are it's getting banished on my opponent's turn, which means I might still get a 2-for-1, but if I don't, if they've got a 4/4 on their turn, then I feel really bad about it. So I'm almost always going to quest with this once and then sit back on it until there's an opportune time to trade it with something and get my card, which means that it is not as good as Bucky. So I'm going to put this lower than I would Bucky in the same spot. I've got him at a B. Where do I want him? I had these at kind of B+ territory. I think I agree with that. I think Snoops is going to come down here. I could see him bumping up below all 3 of these. Louis, Gyro, and Lena, but somewhere in that range. They're all pretty interchangeable. I think, Chris, you were bang on Prince John. 3-cost, uninkable, 5/5, 1 lore. When an opponent plays a character, deal 1 damage to this character. So some of you out there thinking, 3 costs for a 5/5. That's really efficient. I like that. No, it's not. So your opponent is going to play a character every turn for many turns. So at best, it is a 3-cost 5/4. Here's the thing. What do we want to do with the 3-cost 5/4? Well, we want to challenge into our opponent's 3/3 or 3/4 and take it out and have it survive. Okay, you challenge into their 3/3 and it's left with 1 willpower left, and then on your opponent's turn, they play another character and it's dealt another damage and it's banished. So really, this is not a 5/4. For all intents and purposes, this is a 5/3. Because whatever you do on the next turn that you have after you played it, your opponent's going to play a character each turn after. So 3-cost 5/3 uninkable. We had a 3-cost inkable 5/3 in Azurite Sea that I thought was fine. 3-cost uninkable, not very good at all. So basically, you got to hold on to this until there's an opportune time to play it and then just trade it up as quickly as possible. The turn that you play it, ideally, or the turn after you play it, ideally. Which means that, it's still a 3-cost that's taking out a 4 willpower or a 5 willpower character, that's pretty good. But at the cost of being uninkable and sitting your hand until then and having to jump through these hoops, not good enough. So for me, it's a C-. I'll put it above wrong lever, but that's about as far as I'll put it. Okay, Sir Pellinore, 3-cost, inkable, 1/4, 1 lore. When this character quests, your other characters gain support this turn. This is not Alice. I know it kind of seems like Alice. The problem is unless you've got 4 characters or more, this basically just reads give another character support. Because what are you going to do with support? You're going to want to give something strength to challenge. So Sir Pellinore quests, give another character support. That character quests, gives another character strength. That character challenges. So you would need more than 3 characters to have this give to support to multiple characters. And yes, we've established there's play patterns and board states where you will get 4 characters or more on board. But it is not very common. The more common is to have 2-3 characters on board most of the time. So as a result, Sir Pellinore basically just says give support to 1 character. And that's not really good enough. I'd just rather a better body and it have support itself. So as a result for me, he is a D. I'm at C-. I think he's a D. Somewhere in here. I'm losing track of how I feel about my Ds, but I don't really care. They're Ds. Alright. Anita Radcliffe, 3-cost, inkable, 3/3, 1 lore. There's a lot of those in this set. When you play this character, you may give chosen puppy character resist +1. There's a couple more decent puppies, but not enough to increase the likelihood that you're going to draft enough or want to draft enough to have this make any relevance. And even then, resist +1 isn't really enough. I'd much rather the 3/4. This is another D for me. And I'll put it down with the other 3/3s. It's probably the best of them, but... Alright. We're rolling now. We've got Anna, Trusting Sister, 3-cost, inkable, 2/2 lore. When you play this character, if you have a character named Elsa in play, you would put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. The Elsa is a 4-cost, so you're not likely to have this in play on turn, and it's 1 and it's rare, so no. This is another, 2 lore quester. We're gonna put it better than Archimedes. Good job, Anna. Alright. Mrs. Potts, 3-cost, inkable, 2/4, 1 lore. Exert, banish one of your items. Nope. So it is just down with the 3/3s, basically. Sure. There are a couple playable items in this set, so if you happen to have them, then maybe she becomes useful at some point. Stitch, Experiment 626, 3-cost, uninkable, 3/3, 2 lore. When you play this character, each opponent puts the top card of their deck into their inkwell face down and exerted. At the start of your turn, if this card is in your discard, you may choose and discard a card with a inkable sign. You may discard an inkable card to play this character for free, and he enters play exerted. This is an F. Let me tell you why, because some people might be thinking otherwise. So, first of all, if you play this early, you are ramping your opponent. That is awful. And on rate, it is a C. And an inkable 3/3, 2 lore for 3 is a C for me. So on rate as an uninkable, this is already like a C-, D, F. Now, the second ability makes it intriguing. And because later in the game, as I mentioned, ramping isn't as relevant. I'm less scared to ramp my opponent later in the game because chances are they're not going to be able to make good use of it. However, you still have to discard a card to play this, which means you're not getting card advantage. You're just getting this out where maybe you had a less useful inkable card. Well, hopefully you don't have much cards that are less useful than a 3/3 for 2 lore that comes into play exerted. Right? Hopefully your inkable cards in hand are all going to be better than that. The fact that he enters play exerted especially. So, yeah. He's just not nearly good enough. He is a trap. He is an F. I'll put him above Bambi. Well, maybe not even above Bambi. Bambi might stick around one time and at least gain some lore. Alright. Television set. You can imagine how I feel about this. 3-cost inkable item. Exerted and pay 1 ink to look at the top card of your deck if it's a puppy character card, which it won't be. This is an inkable F. All right, Belle's favorite book, 3-cost uninkable, blah, 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 blah. Worst of the worst. Utter trash. Bobby, Purple Pigeon, 3-cost inkable, 4/2, 1 lore bodyguard. So I still remember the 3/3 Hercules bodyguard from the first chapter. I thought that was solid, if unexciting. I think on bodyguards, I need some strength for them to be a threat, but I would rather willpower over strength to a degree. Like, for me, I want the bodyguard to at least have 2 strength. But then after that, I start valuing willpower more. So as a result, I don't even value this as much as a 3/3. Certainly less than a 2/4. But I still think it's usable, right? I like bodyguards. 4 strength is at least a threat. They'll probably trade with the 2/2, but again, it's distracting a character for a turn. Pay attention to your opponent's board state. Don't just run this out as being like, Heath likes bodyguards. So C, C+, somewhere around there. I think C is probably fair. In this range here. I don't know. Somewhere around there. I'm going to say I'll probably take Flower over it. Magic Carpet I'm upset about. Unnaturally upset about. 3-cost inkable, 2/4, 2 lore with Vanish. Which says when an opponent chooses this character for an action, banish them. Your other illusion characters gain Challenger +1. I thought the deal was, if I had a character with Vanish, I got a good rate character. I got to push the envelope in terms of what is acceptable for a character's stat lines. This is not pushed. A 3-cost inkable, 2/4, 2 lore is a C for me. The fact that it gives my other illusion characters Challenger +1, a whole +1, that's what I'm trading Vanish for. Because I got a C body, so I'm trading Vanish for my other illusion characters get Challenger +1. I'm probably not going to see my other illusion characters. And even when I do, Challenger +1, so for that, I'm risking my card being taken out by the simplest action. And I'm not even getting a good body to show for it. I don't even know how to feel about this. I've got it at a C-, but it's probably like a D and probably even like down here. I'm going to put it below the Dodo. Get out of here, Magic Carpet. You should be like a 3/5 at least. Grumble. General Li, head of the Imperial Army. 3-cost inkable, 2/4, 1 lore with resist +1. So worst case scenario, this is a 2/5 for 3, which we already established is in Meg territory here. When my opponent has smaller characters, it's even better than that. So definitely above Meg. So probably in here somewhere. Again, I feel like I'm happy with what I'm going to do with Bolt. That I'm going to have him a little higher than maybe some others might. But somewhere in that range. Perfectly reasonable. Genie, Satisfied Dragon, 3-cost inkable, 3/4, 1 lore. During your turn, this character gains evasive. I really like Genie. So I'm already happy with the 3/4s. Somewhere in the C to low C+ range. But dealing with evasives, and there's a lot of low body evasives in this set. 2 2/2s, a 3/1, 2 1/3s. Yeah, the list goes on. Fantastic. I think I've got this in a B- territory, and I think I've got this over Yelana. I'm very happy with Genie. All right. Zipper, 3-cost inkable, 2/4, 1 lore when you have a character named Monterey Jack in play. I really want to draft that Monterey Jack, but the likelihood is you're not going to have it, so let's ignore that. During your turn, this character gains evasive. I just had a 3/4 for 3 that gains evasive on my turn. Just because I could pay 1 less for this, if I happen to have a Monterey Jack, I got to trade off 1 strength. Get out of here. It's still useful, but we downgraded a lot on this one. This is like a C territory. I'm going to put this as this territory because I think we've got the 2 2/2s and the 3/1 that are going to be common enough that I still want to have this. But I'm hoping if I could draft Genie, if I've already drafted Genie, Zipper goes down a lot. Okay, Vinnie, Green Pigeon, 3-cost, uninkable, 1/4, 1 lore. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your characters is banished, gain 1 lore. I had this as an F originally. Because the 3-cost, uninkable, 1/4, 1 lore body is really uninteresting. But I think that there's enough going on with my character doesn't have to be exerted. It's anytime another one of my characters is banished. So I could just sit back on this, knowing that there's very little removal in this set, especially since one of them requires it to be exerted. This card is going to require me to be aggressive, right? If I'm behind on board state, then this doesn't matter because it's only during my opponent's turn. They have to be challenging me. So if you're not building an aggressive deck, Vinnie is an F. If you're building an aggressive deck, Vinnie is a C. Somewhere around there. I think I'm going to put him around here. And the next card is exactly the same, which is to say, Desperate Plan is either an F or like a B-. 3-cost uninkable action. If you have no cards in hand, draw until you have 3 cards in hand. Otherwise, choose and discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Here's the thing. It is not like Doc where you get the choice. You have to have no other cards in hand. Which means, in draft, oftentimes you'll be topic decking this. And then it's like, pay 3, draw 3 cards? Alright. But if this is stuck in your hand early, and you have difficulty emptying your hand, you do not want to be paying 3 on an uninkable card to cycle other cards. You are down a card. Chances are you're only cycling a couple, so you're not even digging that deep. And it's been rotting in your hands, forcing you to ink other cards to get to that point. So you have to have an aggressive deck for this to matter. So on average, I think this is an F. But I think I'm going to put it at the top of the F, because what I want to convey is you can absolutely have this be very, very good. But you need to make sure that you're building your deck and playing your deck toward that end. And last one is a lot easier. Hamster Ball, 3-cost uninkable item, exert it and pay 1 ink. Chosen character with no damage gains resist +2 until the start of your next turn. In a set where we've got the Atlantean Crystal and this, what? This is the hardest. Oh no, this isn't quite Belle's favorite book, but this is hard F. There was a lot of Fs in this, in the 3 costs. So we are much more balanced in this. Now, admittedly, I moved some Cs down to Ds, so maybe there should be more Cs in this list, but yeah, I think overall this is pretty representative, which is to say that for how many 3-drops you want to have in your deck, really you want 3 to 3.5 drops. So like somewhere between 3 and 4 drops being the highest density of cards in your deck. And the fact that we've only got 3 more A's or B's in the 3-drops than we did the 2-drops means that we're actually a little slim on average for the amount of 3-drops we're going to want to have in our deck for the quality of 3-drops. So keep that in mind. 3-drops are maybe a little bit more scarce in terms of the quality. So maybe you should be valuing them a little high. We'll see how tomorrow plays out with the 4-drops, but something to keep in mind there. All right. Hope you had a great time this one. Hope you had some, for those of you that love the controversial picks, you had some picks that interested you, something to talk about in the comments, because I want to hear your thoughts. Don't worry about if I'm, pushing back on them. I just love to have a good conversation out. Feel free to come back at me. Like, let me know why. But yeah, love you guys. Chris, Steakinator, Riley, everyone post in the comments. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time for the 4-drops. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.